Well, Oklahoma's wide open skies have been called the state's #1 military asset, but concern is growing that Oklahoma could lose that asset thanks to the booming wind industry. The growth of wind turbines across western Oklahoma has lawmakers asking whether the state now needs to step in to protect that vital asset.
Oklahoma's wind industry has been wildly successful. According to the American Wind Energy Association, Oklahoma had more than 6,000 megawatts of wind capacity by the end of June, with another 1,600 megawatts under construction. But all that construction is also threatening to encroach on vital airspace needed by Oklahoma's Air Force bases. The House Transportation Committee held an interim study this week, hearing from military officials and wind energy experts regarding the construction of wind turbines near the state's military bases. Oklahoma Congressman Steve Russell, who appeared before the panel in a recorded video, told lawmakers encroachment on air corridors used for training flights at Oklahoma's military bases could be a major issue when the Pentagon begins looking at the next round of base realignment and closure, or BRAC hearings.
If we lose those corridors, and they're rapidly being encroached with these windmills, then we could lose the airspace training areas. And if we lose the training areas of our bases, you heard President Trump already say that he's looking for possible discussions on BRAC rounds for base closure and realignment. We could be vulnerable.
Oklahoma is home to Tinker Air Force Base in Midwest City, Altus Air Force Base in Altus, and Vance Air Force Base in Enid. Mike Cooper, chairman of the Oklahoma Strategic Military Planning Commission, told the panel one of the few things that separates those bases from bases in other states is Oklahoma's wide open skies.
If you were going to say, what could I do to protect Vance Air Force Base, much like Altus, I have to have great infrastructures, that's ramp, runways, hangars, things like that. But I also need to do everything that I can locally or on the state level to protect my #1 military value asset, which is airspace.
Already, there are concerns that some proposed wind farm projects near Vance Air Force Base could impact military training routes. Lieutenant General Lee Levy, the commander of Air Force Material Command at Tinker Air Force Base, says the wind towers can affect parachute jump and helicopter training or obscure civilian aircraft that drift into those training routes.
Today, we manage around that. And that's an unenviable situation for our young men and women that are either training or increasing their proficiency.
Currently, the Department of Defense's Siting Clearinghouse reviews all renewable energy projects near military bases to ensure they don't interfere with training missions. Dave Belote, a wind energy consultant who previously oversaw the clearinghouse, told lawmakers the process has a perfect record when it comes to protecting vital airspace.
No one can point to a project that was built over an expressed objection, a finding of adverse impact from DOD, because the developers have walked away every time DOD has said you can't do that.
Vic Bird, director of the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission, argued for legislation that would give the agency additional oversight of the permitting process to act as a sort of backstop to the federal government. Bird said as it stands now, the Department of Defense does not have the authority to block construction.
No matter what you have heard or may perceive, the Department of Defense, even Colonel Belote said this, does not have the authority, does not have permitting authority to stop a proposed development, even if it were a threat to national security.
But Belote says even though the clearinghouse is not part of the permitting process, wind farm developers can't get financing or insurance if there's a determination of hazard to military readiness.
The fact that you can't build without, effectively you can't build without a determination of no hazard, and you can't get a determination of no hazard without the military service that's concerned and the clearinghouse both saying we're okay with that, I say the system works.
Wind Coalition President Jeff Clark insisted the industry has cooperated and wants to ensure that Oklahoma's military bases are protected.
We also believe in the preservation of property rights and the opportunity to develop energy resources. And where you can have both, we do believe you ought to have both. And that there are farmers and ranchers across the state, there are energy consumers across the state who want access to cleaner, cheaper Oklahoma-made energy. And if it can be done in a way that does not interfere with the military mission, that's how we want to do it.
A bill that would have required wind farm developers to obtain approval from the Oklahoma Aeronautics Commission before starting construction passed the House during the 2017 legislative session, but stalled in the Senate. That measure could still be brought up when the legislature reconvenes next year.